Success is often celebrated as the highest prize of human effort, yet it so often feels like a prison. How can something we chase so passionately become the very thing that chains us? Here lies the paradox. Achievement promises freedom, but so often it locks us into anxiety, fear of loss, and endless striving. We work for years to reach the top of the mountain, only to discover that we cannot rest there. The summit is not a place of peace, but a ledge where every step risks a fall. Think of a bird flying through the sky. Its freedom comes not from clinging to the air, but from surrendering to it. If the bird tried to hold the wind, it would collapse. Yet we, in our pursuit of success, try to grasp and freeze life as if it were something solid. The harder we grip, the more it slips away. The businessman who finally reaches wealth spends sleepless nights fearing bankruptcy. The artist who becomes famous feels trapped by the expectations of an audience. The student who wins top grades trembles at the thought of falling behind. Success, strangely enough, can feel less like liberation and more like a cage made of gold. Nature seems to mock this obsession. The river never hoards its water. It rushes toward the sea, always letting go, always moving. The tree doesn't cling to last year's leaves. It drops them when their time is done, trusting that spring will come again. But we humans cling to our trophies, our titles, our image of being someone important, as if life would abandon us if we loosened our grip. And so the question arises, what happens when the thing we believe will free us, success, becomes the very chain that binds us? What happens when achievement, instead of expanding our world, makes it smaller, tighter, more suffocating? Alan Watts once suggested that the tragedy of success is that it convinces us to keep running faster, not realizing the race itself has no finish line. We are imprisoned not by failure, but by victory, because the moment we win, we become terrified of losing. So here is the paradox that invites us in. Success is both the prize and the prison. And the deeper question is not how to achieve more, but how to live without being chained by what we achieve. There was once a farmer who hired a young helper to sort potatoes. The task was simple. Make 3 piles, the big ones, the medium ones, and the small ones. No heavy lifting, no endless hours in the field, just sitting in the barn sorting. By noon, however, the boy's face was pale. By evening, he threw his hat down and quit. The farmer was surprised. "Why give up? The work isn't that hard." The boy shook his head. "It's not the labor. It's the decisions. Every potato I had to decide, big, medium, or small. By the 100th one, I was exhausted. My mind feels like it's in chains." This little story captures a truth we rarely admit. Often it's not failure that exhausts us, but success. Every win brings a new decision, a new responsibility, a new weight to carry. The boy wasn't crushed by the potatoes. He was crushed by the constant demand to get it right. Isn't that how achievement feels? A student works hard to become top of the class. At first, there's joy, celebration, pride. But soon the weight arrives. Everyone expects them to stay on top. They must protect their position. Every exam becomes a test not of learning, but of survival. The prize turns into pressure. Or think of a musician who dreams of playing to a full house. The first sold-out show is ecstasy. But after that comes the question, can I do it again? What if I fail next time? The success that once felt like freedom becomes a stage where they are watched constantly, afraid to stumble. The boy in the barn may not have known it, but he was experiencing the same prison we all do, the cage of expectation. When success arrives, it rarely allows us to rest. Instead, it whispers, "Hold on tighter. Don't let it slip." Alan Watts once joked that people climb a ladder of success, only to find it leaning against the wrong wall. We spend years sorting potatoes, or chasing grades, titles, money, only to realize the work never ends. The very thing meant to bring peace brings exhaustion instead. The helper walked away from the barn, lighter for leaving the potatoes unsorted. And perhaps, in that moment, he tasted a freedom many of us are still seeking. The story of the boy in the barn is not just about potatoes. It is a mirror for the way we live. Each achievement in life, the job, the promotion, the recognition, is another potato we must place in the right pile. At first, the act feels rewarding, but slowly the burden of maintaining our place becomes heavier than the work itself. We are not broken by failure. We are worn down by the endless pressure of keeping success alive. In truth, nature shows us a different rhythm. A river does not ask, "Am I flowing fast enough?" It does not cling to its water in fear that tomorrow it may dry up. It simply moves, carrying stones and leaves, carving valleys without effort. The tree does not agonize over whether its blossoms will be admired this spring. It blooms, and when the season ends, it lets go. We, on the other hand, try to freeze the moment of triumph, to hold the applause forever. And in doing so, we suffocate ourselves. Life was never meant to be a still photograph of success, but a moving stream of change. The prison of achievement is built when we mistake a single victory for our identity. Alan Watts often reminded us that the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Success is not the problem. The clinging is. The ladder is not dangerous until we insist on never climbing down. From the farmer's helper to the student, the artist, the worker, the lesson is the same. Our victories are not possessions. They are seasons. They come and go. And their beauty is precisely because they do not last. The tree's blossoms are lovely because they fall. The music moves us because it ends. To live wisely, then, is to learn the rhythm of letting go. Celebrate achievement, yes, but do not chain yourself to it. Let each success be a wave that rises and dissolves back into the ocean. Another wave will follow, and then another. The boy left the barn lighter because he walked away from the need to control every potato. We too can leave lighter, if we remember that the real reward of life is not achievement, it is freedom. There are really two ways to live with success. Path one is the familiar one. You climb the ladder, but once at the top you grip it with white knuckles. Every step higher is shadowed by fear of falling. You measure yourself constantly against others. Am I still ahead? Do they admire me? Will I lose my edge? This path breeds anxiety, isolation, and endless striving. Success here is like owning a glass palace. Beautiful to look at, but you live in terror that one crack will shatter everything. Path 2 is less common, yet far more natural. Here, you still achieve, you still work, you still create, but you do not cling. Success is welcomed as a guest, not chained as a prisoner. You let it come, and you let it go. On this path, achievement adds richness but does not define your worth. You are not imprisoned by your victories because you know they are waves, not monuments. We can see the difference in nature. A desert tries to hold every drop, and so it becomes barren. A rainforest lets water move freely, and so it thrives with abundance. Or think of music. A single musician playing endlessly without pause soon exhausts both himself and the listener. But in an orchestra, each instrument has its moment, and silence is as vital as sound. One way is rigid and suffocating, the other is fluid and alive. In society, too, the metaphor holds. A dictatorship clings to control, silences dissent, and lives in constant paranoia. A democracy, though imperfect, trusts the process of change and renewal. One is a prison of fear, the other a dance of freedom. So it is with our personal achievements. Path 1 turns life into a performance where every mistake feels fatal. Path 2 turns life into a play, where mistakes, surprises, and endings are all part of the beauty. Alan Watts once said, "To resist change, to try to cling to life, is like holding your breath. You'll lose it." Success is not meant to be held like a breath. It is meant to pass through us like air, giving life as it moves. One-liner to remember. Success is a song, not a cage. Sing it, then let it fade. If the prison of success is built from certainty and control, then the key to freedom is something far stranger, the courage to not know. Most of us are taught that strength means always having an answer, always having a plan. But the deeper we cling to certainty, the smaller our world becomes. The businessman who insists he must always know the market ends up chained to his desk. The parent who believes they must always know what's best for their child suffocates the child's own growth. The artist who tries to control every detail loses the magic of surprise. Certainty feels safe, but it slowly strangles life's mystery. Alan Watts loved to point out paradoxes that expose this truth. A knife cannot cut itself. A light bulb cannot illuminate its own surface. The eye cannot see itself directly. These examples remind us that life is full of limits we cannot escape. And yet, in those limits, there is freedom. We don't need to see our own eyes to trust that they are working. We don't need to explain every mystery to live fully in it. Think of the ocean. It never knows what wave will rise next. Yet that uncertainty is what makes it alive, powerful, unpredictable. If the ocean froze its pattern, it would die. Success becomes a prison. When we try to freeze the wave, to insist we know exactly how it must look. But freedom comes when we allow the wave to surprise us, to take shapes we never imagined. I don't know is not weakness. It is spaciousness. It opens the door for new experiences, for wonder, for possibilities greater than our plans. The tree doesn't know how spring will arrive, yet it trusts, and so it blossoms. The bird doesn't know where the wind will carry it, yet it spreads its wings, and the air lifts it higher. We spend much of life fearing the unknown, as if it will swallow us. But perhaps the unknown is not an enemy, but a companion. Perhaps the mystery is not what threatens success, but what saves us from being imprisoned by it. So the question becomes, What if the real freedom is not in achieving more, but in daring to live inside the mystery of not knowing? We began with a paradox. Success, the thing we chase to feel free, so often becomes the thing that binds us. Now, perhaps, that paradox begins to make sense. The problem has never been achievement itself. It is our clinging to it, our attempt to freeze the living flow of life into a permanent trophy. Think again of the boy in the barn, overwhelmed not by the potatoes, but by the endless need to get it right. That is the very weight many of us carry. Every title, every victory, every reputation becomes another potato in our hands. And yet, the moment he let it go, he found relief. Freedom was not in finishing the task perfectly, but in stepping away from the need to control. Life whispers this lesson everywhere. Autumn leaves fall without regret. Rivers flow without hesitation. Even stars burn out, making way for new constellations. Nothing in nature clings, and that is why it thrives. Why, then, should we treat our achievements as possessions we must guard forever? Alan Watts once said, "The more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless." When we cling to success as something permanent, we drain it of its vitality. But when we let it breathe, when we allow it to be a passing flame, it warms us without burning us. So perhaps the true art of achievement is not in holding on, but in knowing when to let go. To trust that what is real, what is ours, will not vanish simply because we loosen our grip. To see that life is not measured by how many victories we collect, but by how freely we dance with them while they last. The prison of success is only real if we believe the walls are solid. The moment we remember that everything moves, everything changes, everything flows, the bars dissolve. What remains is not a fortress of anxiety, but an open sky of possibility. So let your achievements be waves, not cages. Celebrate them, then release them. Trust the rhythm of life, and it will carry you farther than control ever could. Closing line. Success was never meant to be a prison. It was meant to be a song, and songs are beautiful because they end. 不是無視有ありません。